Soulmates, plenty to talk about on this Wednesday, December 7th, the day after, as we will have a runoff recap coming up soon. Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report. I'm Courtney Hicks.
And I'm Nicordelai Corte. We are honored to stand behind this desk each and every day to take you on a journey across Black America and the stories that impact our people.
That's right. We bring you our news, our views, and our voice. Topping our news today, let's head to Minneapolis, where a family is mourning the death of their loved one while also applying pressure to the St. Paul Police Department for transparency in the death of Howard Johnson. The family identified 24-year-old Johnson as the man who died after an encounter with officers. Police say a woman called 911 Monday night saying she was attacked by a man with a gun. When officers responded, they saw the suspect running with that gun. They thought Johnson was trying to carjack someone, so police hit him with a squad car. Police say he was still holding the weapon when officers fired multiple shots, striking Johnson several times, killing him. Now, Johnson's family say they want to see the body cam footage. Mayor Melvin Carter says he is now working with the city's newly appointed police chief as well as the BCA to ensure a timely and transparent investigation.
In Oklahoma, a former correctional officer will serve 46 months in federal prison for violating the civil rights of 3 detainees. A federal jury convicted 53-year-old Matthew Ware. Lawyers say Ware was abusing his position and power to facilitate an attack carried out by white supremacists on black inmates, which included stretching an inmate's limbs by having the man handcuffed to 2 separate benches. The U.S. attorney says Mr. Ware violated the laws he was sworn to uphold, betrayed the public trust, and dishonored the many brave corrections officials who lawfully perform their important work each and every day.
Tensions are high in the case of the officer who is on trial for the murder of Atatiana Jefferson. Arguments began this week in court, and all eyes were on Jefferson's nephew, who took the stand to recall the last moments he saw his aunt alive. Aaron Dean is escorted through the hallway, tight security, as spectator cell phones collected before entering the courtroom.
You are going to hear that this is an absolute intentional act, an unjustifiable act that never should have happened.
Prosecutor Ashley Diener lays out the state's case with emotion, an overview leading up to the single shot that killed Atatiana Jefferson, a non-emergency call about the home's front and side doors open. With lights on, then Dean and another officer in the backyard where he fired his gun through a window.
Something catches out of the left of his eye. Something catches. He sees something. He turns. And you will hear, "Put your hands up, show me your hands." Then, and I'm talking about, show me your hands, put your hands up. Boom. It is not fast enough for Tatiana to process and follow the commands.
Dean's defense follows suit. Attorney Mile Bissett encourages jurors to focus on the information Dean had on trial, an open structure call, not a welfare check. He then referenced the city's police officer training guide and that Jefferson was holding a gun.
Signal 56 is an open structure. You go to that in the book, it says treat it like a silent alarm. Burglary of the building. As soon as Aaron enters the backyard, he sees a silhouette in the window. Aaron sees that silhouette in the window, and that silhouette has a firearm. He takes a half a step back, gives the commands as part of training, draws his weapon for the first and only time right then, and fires 1 shot.
You solemnly swear or affirm.
Zion Carr, Atatiana's nephew, is the first witness, the only person in the home with her that night. He recalls cooking hamburgers, but they burned inside the oven.
What'd you do after all the smoke came from burning the hamburger?
We opened up the screen door and let the smoke go out, and we was just getting paper and going like that so the alarms could stop.
Zion testified they forgot the doors were left open while playing video games, during which time his aunt heard a noise in the backyard.
After she told you she heard a noise, what did she do?
She went to get her weapon out of her purse.
Where was her purse?
Next to her table where she worked at.
Under cross-examination, he showed the jury how his aunt held the gun. Zion struggled with some details and testified he doesn't remember hearing the gunshot, only seeing his aunt fall to the ground.
Did you hear anyone get shot that night?
No, sir.
Why don't you think you heard anything?
I probably don't just remember it.
All right, my goodness. Lawyers argue the lapse in time explains the loss in memory from Atatiana's nephew. Zion is now 11 years old, but was only 8 at the time of the shooting in Nicotalai. I was, taking a look at this story and looking at that baby and being placed on the stand and, watching if the defense was going to go in a little bit on his lack of memory. He was just 8 years old. How devastating and how tragic for him to have to relive this, his young mind to have to relive this.
He was 8 years old at the time and 11 years old now.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, just hearing him on trial, on the stand, having to recount this, and essentially, I think this whole trial may even be re-traumatizing to him, right?
Yes.
And so, I think about him. I think about a lot of the young people that are forced to testify in this case, but also back to the Oklahoma officer. I mean, these are two cases where we see officers behaving badly, and how often have we said on this program? How often have we found that there are a lot of officers that seem to succumb to this idea of becoming judge, jury, and executioner? In the Oklahoma, in the St. Paul example, we saw that the officers used their car, to strike the guy that they suspected had a gun, suspected was
at that point was just a suspect.
Carjacking,
exactly.
Right? And so that's how you treat suspects. Right? There's no due process for folks, and that's a part of what the movement for Black Lives has been about. That's a part of what we're hoping to capture here in this report.
Yeah, and let's keep a close eye on the Atatiana Jefferson case. As we reported just a couple of days ago, that jewelry is all white. Even the alternates are white. Over 200 people showed up to jury duty, to wanting to be a part of this process, and about all those folks, no people of color. So that's going to be very interesting to continue to watch that trial.
No jury of her peers.
Not at all.
Yep. We'll keep our eye on that. Now off to Capitol Hill, where the House committee is expected to complete their investigation into the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol by making criminal referrals to the U.S. Justice Department. Democratic Representative Benny Thompson made the announcement this week and says that while they have decided to issue the referrals for prosecution, they have not disclosed who the individuals on or organizations will be, and if former President Trump is among those named. Now, the committee says their investigation should be completed by the end of the year.
Okay, let's check in on our black farmers, and as a group of them have filed a class action lawsuit against the government, claiming the feds broke a promise to pay off their debts. The suit could pressure the government to keep its word and restore funding, which was dropped after some white farmers filed legal challenges. They argued the exclusion of white farmers was a violation of their constitutional rights, even though the government is working on more financial help. The group says the new programs don't match what they were promised. The lawsuit is pending in the U.S. Court of Federal Claims.
A federal judge has dropped bribery and fraud charges against New York's former Lieutenant Governor Brian Benjamin. The judge says prosecutors failed to provide an explicit example where Benjamin provided a favor for a bribe. The New York Democrat resigned after his arrest last April. He pleaded not guilty to obtaining campaign contributions from a real estate developer after agreeing to secure state money for a nonprofit organization. Benjamin still faces record falsification charges.
And staying in New York for a moment, current Deputy Mayor for Strategic Initiatives Sheena Wright will now serve as first Deputy Mayor, replacing Lorraine Grillo. And current Senior Advisor to the Mayor, Camille Joseph Varlak, will become Chief of Staff, replacing Frank Carone. Mayor Adams talked about their departure, saying they're leaving big shoes to fill and is hopeful for his new appointments.
And speaking of mayors, an 18-year-old from Earl, Arkansas is now mayor, making him the nation's youngest black mayor. Jalen Smith ran in a primary advancing to a runoff that took place on Tuesday. Now, the challenger, Nimmy Matthews Sr., has been employed by the city for twice as long as Jalen's been alive. But the two candidates say they respect each other, adding that their families have known each other for years and that they're excited to see what Jalen will do.
More history is being made as the U.S. Senate confirmed the first black person, she's a sister, from Indiana to ever serve on the 7th Circuit. We're talking about Judge Doris Pryor here. She will serve Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin. The confirmation came nearly 6 months after the Biden administration announced it was nominating her. The Senate voted 60-31 to confirm Pryor, who has served as magistrate judge for the Southern District of Indiana since March of 2018. Here we go.
So many of these historic firsts, and to whom much is given, much is expected.
That's right.
Right? I had a chance to interview Representative Karen Bass, soon to be mayor of Los Angeles. And one of the things that she said when I asked her about being historic first, she said oftentimes she doesn't think about being a historic first while she is doing the work, but she does feel the weight, the responsibility of being extra excellent and making sure that while you're the first, you may not be the last. And so lots of expectations for these historic firsts.
Great feat. And just if I can go back to our conversation yesterday when we mentioned appointments like this, whether it be corporate in the politics or law, it paves the way, but we still want them to keep coming and to retain positions like this.
Yeah.
So it's very good to see.
Absolutely. And speaking of historic first, it's the win that gives Democrats an outright majority in the United States Senate. Warnock takes the office over Herschel Walker. Now, Democrats would have had control of the Senate either way, but now they'll have a clear single vote majority, and that gives them some distinct advantages in the years ahead.
After a hard-fought campaign, you've got me for 6 more years.
A triumphant Raphael Warnock late last night after the results came in. It was close, but he defeated Republican Herschel Walker in a runoff election in Georgia after neither candidate won an outright majority in November.
And how are you planning to celebrate tonight?
I'm going to take a nap.
Take a nap because this was an intense race, and Walker, who was massively outspent and beset by a number of allegations surrounding his personal life, quickly conceded.
There's no excuses in life. And I'm not going to make any excuses now because we put up one heck of a fight.
By securing that one seat, Democrats transformed the Senate from a 50-50 split to 51-49. That means that they'll no longer have to rely on the tie-breaking vote of Vice President Kamala Harris to keep control, and it means Republicans will lose some of their committee seats next year. Moderate Democrats like Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema will also lose some of their sway.
You can't blame no one.
Walker may not be blaming anyone, but plenty of Republicans are frustrated, stung by the consistent advantage that Democrats seem to have in getting their voters to cast their ballots before Election Day.
You got to bank those early votes. Why are we taking a chance Grandpa can get out of the bathroom that day, let alone the House, to vote? Get his vote a month in advance.
Early voting, baby.
Why are we waiting for that?
Now, based on the early numbers, more voters in Georgia cast their ballots before Election Day than on Election Day.
Wow, so many questions as most of us soulmates were up a little late trying to get to the end of this particular runoff. But I was listening to a lot of the talk. I was listening to a lot of the rhetoric, and I was flipping, from network to network because I like to get it all in. And
you too?
I do too. And in case you didn't know, soulmates, Dr. Corte is a political pundit. So I've got a couple questions for you if we do have the time to get to both of them. If not, we'll circle back around. First, I want to start with the Republicans and this choice of this path that they're going to take. Are they going to stick with the base, this MAGA base, the Trumplicans, as I've heard them called, or is it really time to steer away from that whole Trump cover, if you will?
Well, that's a very important question for Republicans to figure out. but clearly Herschel Walker doesn't represent a path to victory.
This is true.
Nor have a lot of Trump Republicans running statewide this past election cycle. In fact, most of the folks that Trump endorsed, including Herschel Walker, did not win their seats. And so, Republicans, have a very important question in front of them. Are they going to put forward candidates that black folks, certainly black folks in Georgia, found outright offensive? Or are they going to put forward candidates that actually have some ideas on how they're going to make black people's lives better? How they're going to help to close the racial wealth gap and address, some of the kitchen table issues that black folks grapple with.
And one more question for you quickly. The Warnock win in the 12th hour, of course, we saw Obama with that big endorsement. Why not Biden coming to Georgia in that last hour? Well,
Biden did come down to Georgia a few times. He has endorsed Raphael Warnock, but I think it was probably sort of a closing argument decision to have Barack Obama come out there and really excite black voters, young voters, to come out and make their voices heard in this runoff election. And so I don't think it's any shade to President Biden.
Just asking.
I just think President Obama continues to be incredibly popular in the Democratic Party, especially among black constituents and young voters.
Yeah, that was a little question that came up last night in the conversation. Thank you, political pundit. Still ahead, shocking new sexual assault claims against Bill Cosby.
That's right. We'll tell you how many women are coming forward in the latest allegations. You're watching Fox Soul's Black Report.